Okay, afterwards you can all look somewhere in this section for the little fuzzy top to the microphone that just popped off. So that will mean that my conversation with you will not be muffled as it's supposed to be.
Something like this?
Yeah, something like that.
There was a spare up here.
I shall return. Okay. Ooh, that's a fancy long one. You know, that makes it look like it's the hat on a nutcracker. Oh, and
There's the other one.
I now have a spare. And I'm not going to switch them out, it just took too long. Okay, we'll try this again. All right, and okay, now it's going. A couple additions to the announcements. We have on the back table, since we got holidays coming up, something for each of the holidays. So Lights of Hanukkah, to get you set for starting Sunday night, and a guide for the celebration of Rishon, an observance of the birth of the Jewish Messiah. That will help you through that part of the holiday. So feel free to pick one of those up if you've not already done so. That being said, we begin our service tonight with Magen Avot. It's a reminder, very much in keeping with the time of Hanukkah, it's a reminder that God is a shield to our ancestors, that He's watched over our people down through the years. And we know that He's going to continue to do that. How? Because it's Shabbat. And Shabbat's the guarantee of His permanent contract with us to be our God and we to be His people. And that's why He is Magen Avot, shield of our ancestors, pages 10 to 13.
Magen Avot bidavaro, Machaye metim mamaro, Hahel hakadosh she'en kamahu, Hameniach le'amo v'yom shadakadasho. Ki v'amaratza l'haniach lahem v'fanav navot b'yira v'fachad v'nodei lishmo b'kol yom tamid ma'en habarachot el hahodaot Adon HaShalom, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Umvarek Shavihi, Umeniach Bikadusha, Le'amedu Shnei Oneg, Zecher, Lamaseh, Lamaseh Bereshit, Zecher, Lamaseh Bereshit. Together, with His word He was a shield to our fathers. By His decree He will give life to the dead. The holy God, with whom no other can compare, who provides His people rest each holy Sabbath day. In reverence and awe we will serve Him daily, and every day we will thank Him suitably. He is the God to whom all thanks are due, the Lord of peace, who makes the Sabbath special, He blesses the seventh day for his people, to give them joy and remind them of creation.
And as we light the Shabbat lights this evening, we are in fact reminded not only of creation, but an important part of creation, the day he set aside for us, Shabbat, as well.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by your commandments and commanded us to light the candles of the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahoit or yigayim v'natan lanu Yeshua Mishakenu ha'olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to be a light for the nations and gave us Yeshua our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
We turn now to our Tehillat Habrit Kadashah portion for this evening, pages 136 and 137, the bottom. And it is a reminder that in answering our prayers down through the centuries, particularly the prayers of the Amidah, God has in fact redeemed his people. And so we respond in gratitude with a text on the bottom of the page which begins, Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael, ki pakad et amo vayishlach lo padut, vayarem lanu keret Yeshua v'veit David avdo. Together.
Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come and has redeemed his people. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago, salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days.
Do notice that also in keeping with what we reflected on just a minute or two ago, this text reminds us that he was again, Magen Avot, the shield of our ancestors, because he rescued us out of the hands of our enemies. And we remember that too. And, Hanukkah coming up on Sunday night. A beautiful example of that rescue. Well, he has come and has redeemed his people. In fact, he's become the horn of salvation from the house of the servant David, quite literally. And so we respond to the one who is exactly that, but who now sits enthroned in the place of ultimate authority in the heavenly realms. Pages 40 and 41 is our response. That's Elohim Asher.
Elohim asher diber migadem pamim rabot u'dirachim rabot el avot le'ad hanevi'im diber aleinu be'hakarit hayamim ha'eleh le'yad ha'bein asher Some leo reish kol, u'viado, gamasa et ha'olamim, u'zohar kevodo, v'tzelem atzmuto, v'nosei kol bivaro, rav ha'gvura, Ulacha spoke to our fathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, in the end of days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory, and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sins, he sat down in the place of authority, beside the majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and lasting, right and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
He's sitting on one of those heavenly thrones, as in fact pictured by the sages of old, anticipating the time where he will return and fulfill the rest of the messianic function. We too anticipate that time, and in the beautiful words of Ohr Chadash, pages 156 and 157, we in fact, as we praise our God, we utilize those words of expectation and anticipation.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, לעלמא דברה חירותי, וימלך מלכותי ויצמח פורקני ויחרב משיחי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בהגלו בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם לעולמי יתברך. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם לעולמי יתברך. וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודש הבריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה, וישרתה תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמיה, וחיים טובים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרמיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world, which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom and cause his salvation to sprout, and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the life of all the house of Israel, speedily, yes, soon, and let us say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever, eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven, and good life for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us and for all Israel, and let us all say, Amen.
May he bring about the reign of his kingdom, cause his salvation to sprout. Find that same phrase in the Almidah. And bring near his Messiah in your lifetime. That will occur at the time when he restores his presence again to Zion, which is the first of the two paragraphs of the Almidah portions for tonight. The second reminds us that he continues to be the God who is the shield to our ancestors and therefore to us as well. We rise now as we respond with paragraphs 5 and 6 of the Almidah, pages 74 to 79. Utilize these words to express your gratitude to our great God, quietly. We thank you for you, O Lord our God, are our ancestors' God for all eternity. You are our rock, our shield that saves through every generation. And this is why all the living shall thank you and praise your name faithfully. You are the God of salvation and deliverance. Blessed are you, O Lord. Your name is good, and to you it is pleasant to give thanks. You may be seated. We continue to remind ourselves, as we turn to pages 42 and 43, of that reality that the God of the world is our King. And the one who is the God of the world is also the rock of Jacob and the shield of our salvation. We will work through this responsively. I'll lead you in the first line or two in Hebrew and ask that you respond with the top paragraph. I'll respond with the second. You get the third. Emet Elohei Olam Malkeinu, Tzur Yaakov Magen Yeshenu. And you respond.
It is true, the God of the world is our King. The rock of Jacob is the shield of our salvation. From generation to generation he endures, and his name endures, and his throne is established, and his kingdom is faithfulness
forever endure.
And his word lives and endures. It is faithful and desirable forever. It is from everlasting to everlasting. It's for our ancestors and for us. It's for our children and for our generations, in fact, for all generations of the seed of Israel, his servants.
The help of our fathers are you from ages past, a shield and a savior to their children after them in all generations and generations. In the heights of the world is your dwelling, and your judgments and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth.
And this is why happy is the person who heeds your commandments, your Torah, and who places your word on their heart. It is true that you are the Lord of your people. You are the mighty King to plead their case. It is true, you are the first and the last, and besides you, we have no King, Redeemer, and Savior. If those realities that we have in fact mouthed sink deep into our lives, then we will respond with the reality that is framed in the words of Ein Kamoka, pages 88 and 89. There is truly no God like you. Now let me pause just very briefly. Virtually every one of our cantors does Ein Kamoka in a different way. Why? Welcome to Judaism. Wide and varied, different tunes. And in fact, as a cantor friend of mine told me many, many years ago, he was a graduate of Jewish Theological Seminary. he said there are over 60 different ways to sing the Shema. So that means it's great to experience a variety, but here's what's incumbent on you. You got to pay real careful attention to the cantor of the night. And you need to follow carefully at the same pace and with the same words as said cantor. Fair enough? Because we're supposed to do this together as a community, as a whole. Take it away.
Ein kamoga Elohim Adonai ve'ein kamasecha Melchucha melchut kol olamim Umemshatacha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai hoz le'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Together, there is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
Notice how frequently it talks about the Lord, about him reigning, about his kingdom. And so now we acknowledge that he will rule over our lives as well as we rise once again facing Jerusalem, the direction of the ark, and respond on pages 34 to 39, affirming, you, O Lord, are my God and King, and I will follow you fully.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Malachuto, Le'olam va'ed. Ve'afta et Adonai Elohecha, Lechol Elavcha, Kol nafshecha ukol me'edecha ve'hayu ha'dvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom alevavecha ve'shinanta levanecha ve'divarta bam ve'shivtacha be'beitecha u'vaytacha ha'vaderech U'shaktecha u'limunecha, u'kshatam le'ot al yadecha, ve'hayu latotafot be'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Blessed be he whose glorious kingdom is eternal. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your life, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands, and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates.
On pages 88 and 89, Vayeshev so reminds us that the reality we have affirmed will become the reality for everyone throughout his universe. It's the time, as Vayeshev so reminds us, that from Zion will go forth the Torah and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem.
Vayehi ben Aharon, vayomer Moshe, Kum Adonai vayafutzoi hoivacha, veyanusu misanecha mipanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah. came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you. For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel.
He gave us a tremendous gift in giving us the Torah. And so we respond to it. Tonight the response will only be on page 133 because for some reason or other, the middle section has been evacuated. So we'll only be going through the two outer sections. So page 133, our response to the gift that God has given.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
To our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
O God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
O God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
Them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you? To fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways.
All the Lord said, we will do.
Misha Barak Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Rabbi John. May he bless Celia. May he bless Janice. And may he bless Virginia, who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMavorach. Baruch Adonai HaMavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Bless the Lord who is blessed. Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv, be'eretz Kanaan elet toladot Yaakov, Yosef ben Shava ve'esrim shana hayaro et echav batzon. You may be seated. And so begins a very interesting story. And it says, and Jacob took up residence in the land where his father or his ancestor, Megure, was a ger or a sojourner, as Abraham described himself. And that was in the land of Canaan. And then it goes on to say, this is the account of Jacob. All right? And right after that it says, Joseph. At which point you might say, huh? If this was the account of Jacob, and therefore his descendants, who should have been the first one named here? Or you don't know the order of the children of Israel. Reuben, thank you. Why Joseph? You know, this question was asked down through the ages by the rabbis of old, and they were wondering why in this order. And their answer is very astute. Because Joseph was a person like Jacob. Now let me reverse that for you. That means that Jacob was a person like Joseph. Yes, that's a big O. Because there's nothing said in the text about Joseph that is essentially negative. And if you understand the text about Jacob, there's nothing said in the text about Jacob that is essentially negative. It's just people have read it that way. But anyhow, how did I get sidetracked? Oh, because I read the word Joseph. Now it turns out he was 17 years old, and he was a shepherd along with his brothers for the flock. Another interesting thing. Joseph, the one after whom the rabbis of old would name a second Messiah, son of Joseph. And Joseph was a shepherd. Interesting. Not part of the story for tonight, but I'll let you reflect on that as you listen to the text, both the Parsha and the other text for tonight.
Genesis 39, 20 through 23. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, in the place where the king's prisoners were kept, and there he was in prison. But Adonai was with Joseph, showing him grace and giving him favor in the sight of the prison warden. The prison warden made Joseph supervisor of all the prisoners in the prison, so that whatever they did there, he was in charge of it. The prison warden paid no attention to anything Joseph did, because Adonai was with him, and whatever he did, Adonai prospered.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting, planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
And you know what we do next?
Read the Torah.
That's right. Together we read the Torah. Get out your bulletins. Follow along. No, don't follow along. Join in the reading of the text. Everybody got the copy in front of you? All right, here we go. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv, Be'eretz Canaan Eleh Toledot Yaakov Yosef ben Sheva Esrei Shana Haya Ro'eh Et Echav Batzon. Very good. And now, we recognize the fact that these are words that came directly from God. As our ancestors recognized the same thing, when they stood before God, so we stand before God as well and receive these words as they did. The way in which we receive them is we respond with Ohr Chadash. Pages 98 and 99. Transliteration is page 95 if you need it. I did say, at least some people heard me, we stand as our ancestors did. Thank you.
Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael avi Adonai ve'ad Moshe.
This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's command by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated.
I'll be reading from Genesis chapter 41, verses 38 through 44, and verse 46. Pharaoh said to his officials, "Can we find anyone else like him? The Spirit of God lives in him." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You will be in charge of my household. All my people will be ruled by what you say. Only when I rule from my throne will I be any greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Here, I place you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, had him clothed in fine linen and a gold chain around his neck, and had him ride in his second best chariot. And they cried before him, "Bow down." Thus he placed him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I, Pharaoh, decree that without your approval, no one is to raise his hand or his foot in all of the land of Egypt." Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Then he left Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout all the land of Egypt.
When God speaks, his people are supposed to listen. If they listen, they will respond. If they respond, then the words will sink deep into their lives, like a tree driving its roots into the ground. So we respond with Etz Chaim, pages 96 and 97, and we say, renew our days as of old.
Etz Chaim hi nama hazikimah v'tohecha be'usha terahecha dar
was an interesting transaction, thanks to this ever-wandering microphone clip. Now we have the opportunity to put on the microphone that he talked about. Now we have the opportunity to stand as his priests did, and we as his priests now stand before him, and we respond with Uznucho Yomar.
Uvnucho Yomar Shuva Adonai Rivavot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, "Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you with your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who experience your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay to return your Messiah. Ba'avor David Abdecha, al teshev penei mishachecha. Kilakach tov natati lachem, torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah."
As we greet one another here, feel free to greet one another around you.
You have to go all the way over to the other side.
Hi, darling. Are you minding the store here?
I am.
You're so good. That's so nice of you.
Coming far afield. I am. I've done greeted everybody over there 100 times. Shabbat shalom, sweetheart.
Shabbat shalom, sister.
Somebody left the cigarette.
You did a great job.
Battery, yeah.
Now this is another one of those dangerous evenings. The clock on the wall's not working. Yeah, exactly. This past couple weeks, I have spent a bit of time reflecting on one of my favorite pieces of literature, the Narnia Chronicles. And I read a reflection on the Narnia Chronicles, which begins, and I quote, "The entrance to Narnia is marked by a single bright lamppost. Even in the middle of a 100-year-long winter, this light continues to shine brightly," end quote. Now the books are a great story with wonderful themes and significant lessons. As it turns out, we find ourselves in the middle of a season of the celebration of great stories as well. And in fact, the story of Hanukkah is one such story. In fact, it's made up of several interrelated stories, and there are important things to learn from these stories. And I'm going to suggest that if we assimilate the full meaning of these stories, we'll discover that the story of Hanukkah is truly a story for the ages. Now, the first of the interrelated stories has to do with Judah Maccabee, and we have a condensation of that story in the Matzor, and you'll get a chance next week to look at that story. As it turns out, it in itself is made up of two stories of great miracles. Number one has to do with the supernatural victory of the Maccabees against the Syrians. And as a result of this victory against overwhelming forces, they preserved the integrity of Judaism for the future. And that was accomplished through the dedication of the temple. And they also preserved the identity of Israel. They preserved the identity of Israel for her people. And they did this by returning Israel to Jewish rule. Therefore, they preserved the identity and protected the destiny of the Jewish people. and so ensured the survival of Judaism, of Israel, of the Jewish people, and of God's purpose through them. Look, if it weren't for that, there would be no Jews. There would be no Israel from this point on in history. Well, what does that mean? It means for us, we wouldn't be here today, except for that. It also means that another one of the holidays we celebrate would never have occurred, because there wouldn't have been a Mary and a Joseph and a Jewish town of Bethlehem in the village of Judea. Well, anyhow, the second miracle is the miracle of the lights, which is why we light the Hanukkahs, or the Hanukkahot. And we have our grand one behind us. And it is at this time of year that we light not the 7, we will light all 9 of those lights. It's the miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 days. So now, all around the world, we are celebrating Hanukkah and its miracles. And part of that celebration includes the making and the eating of latkes. They're made of flour and oil to remind us of the miracle of the lights. And every now and then, if not most frequently, our kids in Shabbat school will end up making latkes that we get to eat. Flour and oil to remind us of the miracle of the lights. As it turns out, many years ago, as this particular Hanukkah story I'm going to relate goes, it was Hanukkah. And the people in a tiny village near Kiev, by the way, the tiny village near Kiev, we may very well have visited, we being Dr. Patrice and I many years ago, and some of her family comes from that area. But anyhow, in this tiny village near Kiev, the villagers feared that they could not make latkes because they had run out of flour. So what do you do when it happens? You go to the local rabbi and say, what do we do? So the local rabbi, Reb Rudolph, was called in to solve the problem. And of course he responded as a good rabbi, don't worry, you can substitute matzah meal for flour and the latkes will be just as delicious as ever. At this, Anya anxiously looked at her husband and asked, Morty, you think it'll work? Of course, replied Morty. After all, Rudolph, the Reb, knows reindeer. But there's another significant story associated with Hanukkah. Unfortunately, it does not come with a happy ending, but it comes with a serious point to be made. It's the story of Hannah and her 7 sons. The story goes like this. It too is in the Mock story. You'll get to look at it next week, or grab a Mock story off the bookshelf and look at it tonight. Hannah and her 7 sons were taken captive and brought before the king, the story says. To the first son, the king said, bow down before the idol. The boy replied, I will not deny the Holy One, for he has told us, I am the Lord your God. Kill him, commanded the king. And they did as he commanded. Then they led in the second son. Bow down before the idol, ordered the king. The boy cried out, I will not betray my God, for he has written, you shall have no other gods before me. Him too the king ordered to be killed. Next came the turn of the third son. Bow down before the idol, ordered the king. The boy answered, I will not bow down before the idol, because God has commanded, you shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. And they led him out to die like his brothers. Well, the same thing happened to the 4th son, then to the 5th, and then to the 6th son. Each in turn refused to bow to the idol. Each in turn, as part of their response, quoted the Torah. And each in turn was killed. Finally, the king came to the 7th son with the same demand and with the same response. At this point, Hannah grabbed her son, and as Hannah spoke to her youngest, reassuring him of the resurrection, they killed him in her arms. At this point, she then raised her hands to heaven and prayed, my heart rejoices in the eternal, because my children remain faithful to him in death, as they did in life. You enemies and oppressors of Israel. Well, we got a lot of those down through the years, don't we? And a quick reflection here. That too is part of the reason for this Shabbat being a special Shabbat, to deal with or to respond in some degree to the issue of anti-Semitism. But back to the story. You enemies, and her prayer, you enemies and oppressors of Israel, now in vain is your arrogance. O Lord, I implore you, Take my life from me so that I may be united with my dear children. Take me to you that I may yet live. And no sooner had she ended her prayer than she sank to the earth and died. Not a happy ending. So what can we learn from the story of the miraculous vial of oil and from Hannah and her 7 sons? From both of the stories, we learn the importance of passing on from person to person and from generation to generation, passing on the Torah, our traditions, and our tenacious commitment to our God. You see, as you reflect on it soberly, there are some realities or truths that are not negotiable. There are some convictions worth standing up for, even perhaps suffering for, and there are some commitments important enough to die for. Raising another question about the story. But where did Hannah's resolute faith in the resurrection come from? Well, if you remember as you've prayed the Amidah down through the years and the weeks, paragraph 2 talks about the God who raises his people from the dead. And then she also had the hope of the Messiah and for the Messianic age. That's paragraph 1. God will in love bring a Redeemer, a liberator, to his children and his children's children for his name's sake, for his reputation's sake. And reflecting on this and other realities found in the Tanakh and our understanding and teaching of it down through the years, the rabbis of old said the following concerning the blowing of the shofar. Now, I know that's a different holiday, but this is what they said concerning the blowing of the shofar. It says, one day, the shofar will be blown, and the Messiah will come, and the dead will rise. A hope in the resurrection. But it's also suggested by the parashiot, the passages that we read before and during Hanukkah, part of which was read for you tonight, Genesis chapter 37 to 40. The Torah portion for Hanukkah, which will be read next week, deals with the story of Joseph. No, I'm sorry. This portion for tonight deals with the story of Joseph, who was despised by his brothers. He was sold as a slave and then jailed for a crime he did not commit. In time, he would become the he would rise to the second most powerful position in Egypt and would save his family. Now, these were humble beginnings. Yet the story of Joseph and the story of Hanukkah both have been viewed by our sages, our rabbis of old, as speaking of the Messiah and of his era. In fact, it's from the story of Joseph that our sages first began to call the Messiah who would come Ephraim, our righteousness. Messiah, Ben Yosef, or son of Joseph. Now this Messiah that they describe would not be esteemed by people, but would be despised. That's why during Hanukkah, the story of Joseph is read, because it speaks of a liberator and a redeemer and his humiliation. And so, in a later midrash, the Sikta Rabbati, the Messianic era was associated with the Feast of Hanukkah. And it was suggested that this would be a time when Israel would bask not only in the lights of Hanukkah, but in the light of the Messiah. We reflect on that from time to time, too. When we do the paragraph called the Abridged Amidah, we pray that we will get to see what? The lengthening of the light of the Messiah. And also, we reflect on this same reality when we sing L'chad Odi. A few lines from verses 4 and 5. Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite, the dude from Jesse and David's line from Bethlehem, draws nigh, bringing us redemption, liberation. And then the next verse goes on to say, wake up, here it is, your light is come. So arise, shine, awake, awake, sing a grand song, because the glory of God is revealed to you. Light, glory, part of the themes here. Well, a further connection between light and the Messiah is found in the comments of our rabbis on Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10. A midrashic story commenting on that portion says the following, and I quote, this text, talking about Isaiah 61:10, teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, will put on Ephraim, our true Messiah, remember Ephraim, son of Joseph, he will put on Ephraim a garment whose splendor will stream forth from world's end to world's end. Interestingly, the one called son of Joseph, like Joseph, had a magnificent cloak or robe placed on him. Anyhow, back to what the text says. And Israel will make use of the light of Messiah and will say, listen to what they will say, blessed is the hour in which he was born. The Messiah was born. Blessed is the womb from which he came. Blessed is the eye which merits seeing him. Let me stop there for a second, because that sounds exactly like the story in Luke chapter 2 of Shimon, who says virtually the same things. And then it's back to the quote, the utterance, talking about the Messiah, the utterance of whose tongue is pardon and forgiveness for Israel, end quote. Sounds a little like the story in Matthew chapter 1, where the angel said to Joseph, you'll call his name Yeshua, because he will do what? He will pardon and forgive his people for sins. Now, in light of all this, in light of all this, it's interesting to note some descriptions of Joseph found in next week's Parsha. And that was read to you as well. It says, he is a man who is obviously filled with the Ruach Hashem, the Spirit of God. And then Pharaoh placed his own signet ring, keep that phrase in mind, on Joseph's finger as a token of his authority. He dressed him in beautiful clothing. There's a repeating theme, isn't it? Dressed in beautiful clothing. And declared, see, I've placed you in charge of all the land of Egypt. Goes on to say, he was 30 years old as he entered the service of the king. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and began traveling all across the land. Boy, if that isn't Luke 3:23, I don't know what is. At 30 years old, he entered the service of his father. And then what did he do? Traveled throughout the land. The echoes are amazing. No wonder, then, we have the statement found, or the statement of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Nachman found in the Hanukkah Haggadah. You thought a Haggadah was just for Passover. Well, there's a Hanukkah, let's put it this way, a Hanukkah Haggadah. Just stylize it. And I quote, the purpose of the celebration of Hanukkah is to welcome the Messiah. Peace is the Messiah, end quote. By the way, that last phrase is taken directly from Micah chapter 5, verse 5. By the way, you do remember what occurs 3 verses earlier. But you, Bethlehem of Judea, out of you will come forth the one who will rule for me in Israel. Anyhow, and so then where does this idea come from, this connection come from? Well, I'm going to suggest from the Hanukkah Haftorah, of course. And so I'll look very briefly with you at that, highlight a couple things. Zechariah chapter 3 and 4 are the texts for next week's Haftarah. It says, the Lord Almighty declares, listen, O Joshua the high priest. Let's put that in Hebrew. O Yeshua the high priest. And then that sounds like Hebrews chapter 7. Anyhow, you are an illustration of the good things to come. Don't you see? Joshua represents my servant, the branch. Ah, the branch, a messianic title. Part of one of the prayers that we say during Sukkot in requesting that the Messiah intervene. Anyhow, it goes on to say, I will remove the sins of this land in a single day. And after that, the Lord Almighty declares, you will live in peace. There it is, in peace again. The angel who had been talking with me woke me. What do you see now? He asked. I answered, I see a gold lampstand, a menorah. I see 2 olive trees, one on each side. I asked, what does this mean? Then he said, this is God's message to Zerubbabel. Oh, interesting character. We don't have the time to unwrap that one. Major figure in the return of the Jewish people to Israel after the exile. But anyhow, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty. Therefore, no mountain, however high, can stand before Zerubbabel. Now, the rabbis, in reflecting on this particular text, connected it with the Messiah. When they said in yet another midrash, this one is Tanhuma, it is written, "Who are you, O great mountain?" Quoting the text. "Before Zerubbabel, you will become level ground." What is, who are you, O great mountain? Here's their answer. This is the King Messiah. And why is he called a great mountain? Because he is greater than all the patriarchs and matriarchs, elevated above Abraham, exalted even above Moses, and superior to the ministering angels. End quote. Now that's a wow text. That's how they understood the King Messiah. But now to come back to our Zechariah text, 4:11. Then I asked him about the 2 olive trees, one on each side of the lampstand. Then he told me, here it is, they represent the 2 anointed ones. You know enough Hebrew to understand what anointed ones mean. It's a term for Mashiach. 2 anointed ones, servants of the Lord of all the earth. What does this mean? Well, please remember that as the rabbis studied the text, they came to understand that there'd be a Messiah, son of David, Ben David, and a Messiah, Ben Yosef, whom we already reflected on, son of Joseph. Zerubbabel being the royal ruler on whom God places his own signet ring. Remember signet ring from before? Well, he's a descendant of David. The other person mentioned here is the person called Joshua or Yeshua, the high priest, the branch, son of Joseph. In the year 5 BCE, at Hanukkah, the historian Luke records one further significant Hanukkah story. The first Hanukkah candle had been lit. And the text goes on to say, and there were shepherds living in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks that night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them. Here it is again. The glory of the Lord shone round them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Redeemer, a Liberator, has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." And then Luke continues that story a week later. He says, on the 8th day, the last day of Hanukkah, when the lights had increased to their brightest point, when it was time to circumcise him, he was named Yeshua. When the parents brought in the child, Yeshua, to do for him what the Torah required, Shimon took him in his arms. Whoa, slow down, Shimon. You know who Shimon was in history? He was the last of the 5 Maccabee brothers who survived in the battle against the Syrians. And it's through Shimon Maccabee that the Hasmonean line then continued. Anyhow, another Hanukkah character here. Shimon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, now dismiss your servant in peace." There's that phrase repeating again, in peace. "For my eyes have seen your salvation." Hebrew for salvation is what? Yeshua. My eyes have seen your Yeshua, which you have prepared in the sight of all people. A light, there it is again, a light for revelation to the Gentiles. And the glory, there it is again, for your people Israel. In the very next scene, then, along comes Hannah, as in 7 sons. And so our Hanukkah stories are now complete. And the characters come back yet again. The one who would guarantee our resurrection from the dead and bring it about had arrived, as expected, on that Hanukkah night so many years ago. Now, back to Narnia for a minute. You knew I was going to get back there. The reflection that I shared goes on to read in another lesson we can take away. Quote, sometimes our lives can feel like they're shrouded in winter, when clouds of family responsibilities, financial pressure, or just plain stress can darken this holiday season. Like the lamppost in Narnia, let's all bring the light back into our holiday season and learn how to stay centered, focused, and illumined all year long. End quote. And my recommendation to you then is, let's remember to walk in the light as we follow God's light. Learn the lessons of this grand story, a story for the ages. The interlocking stories of Hanukkah. Take a minute or so to respond in quiet. A story for the ages has in fact begun. We anticipate the time when that story for the ages concludes. And we anticipate that through the arrangement, pages 102 to 107, as we rise and anticipate the time of the arrival of the kingdom of David's greater son, the Bethlehemite, who once again draws near, bringing us redemption and liberation. As you stand, there will come a time when you are supposed to bow. It's only one line for which you bow. If you don't know which line to bow at, keep your eyes on the cantor. You bow along with the cantor, and you stop bowing when the cantor stops bowing. Fair enough? We face Jerusalem as we respond in pages 102 to 107.
Aleinu v'shabeach l'Adon hakol, v'tekedu l'Yoseh bereshit, shelo asanu k'goya harasot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo tzam kalkeinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu kechal hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינת עוזו וגבי מרומים הוא אלוהינו עינוד אמת מלכנו את תצורתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשב אותה אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת עינוד. It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for He has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs, our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like Him. For He stretched forth the heavens like a tent and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be at an end. Then shall the world be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's greater Son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled. The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Kakatuba Toratecha, Adonai Yimloch, Leolam Vayed, Vanemar, Vahaya Adonai, Vamelech Kol Haaretz, Vayom Hahu, Yeh Adonai Echad, Ushmo Echad.
You may be seated. As Patrice mentioned at the outset of the service, rather than our time of sharing the prayer, we're going to do sort of a special thing tonight related to what we've been invited to join, and that is to join Messianic Jews in a day of prayer, or a day during which we pray for the persistent and recurring issue and problem of anti-Semitism. This was something that was initiated by a friend of ours, and she invited others to join this special project or day for prayer. And Patrice accepted the invitation, and as part of that has invited us to involve ourselves in the appropriate reflections and prayer concerning this major issue. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Patrice.
Except you're gonna be hanging around, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to stick my head in my office for just a second, but I'll be right back.
I'll talk to them for a minute.
Okay.
It's interesting that both John and I have been feeling burdened about this particular topic for about 6 months now. And although I could have gotten involved in a different project, it seemed more and more like the Lord was leading us to concentrate time and effort into the problem of anti-Semitism. And there's a lot of different things people can say about it, but how on earth do you have a day where you pray about anti-Semitism? And if you've asked yourself that tonight, you're not alone. How do I, dear God, help them with anti-Semitism? Seems very, very not a good way to go down that path. Would you agree? It's hard to even wrap your mind around how you would possibly pray and what would it do any good to pray about. And so looking into the topic with more intensity, we did come up with a few things that we thought we wanted our congregation, and in fact people listen to this who are not even in our congregation. So for all of you over the airwaves who are listening, a shout out to you. And so I have a couple of remarks, and when John rejoins us, we have a slight project for us to work on. For a phenomenon often dubbed the world's oldest hatred, anti-Semitism is not well understood. In fact, there are many myths associated with anti-Semitism, particularly here in America. I don't know if you've ever heard this one, but some people say, well, you know, there hasn't been a problem with anti-Semitism since the Holocaust. We beg to differ. There has been a problem even since the Holocaust, which is almost unthinkable. You would have thought that would put an end to it, and yet it hasn't. And as a matter of fact, you get the blowback of, well, Holocaust, that really wasn't as bad as people said, or really probably didn't happen, like that's just sort of made up. That kind of thing has rebounded instead. You might think, here's another myth, that anti-Semitism comes from one type of political person. Oh no, it comes from all over the political spectrum. It comes from all over the world. It comes from all different kinds of religions. And it comes from people both on the far left and the far right. So even your political party won't save you from a problem. We've also heard the idea that if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. Except there's a whole big group of people that criticize Israel. And you know who they are? Israelis. They criticize their government even more than we criticize ours. It's amazing, really. You would think they would, I don't know, somehow be better, but they're just people like we are. And their governments are just people like our governments are. And we also hear, in a very sad way, of religious anti-Semitism. John and I have been horrified at some of the things we've overheard people who should know better saying. Well, how would you know if someone is a real, born-again Christian, they can't be anti-Semitic? Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what they've been taught, and what no one has bothered to explain is not correct. Let me give you some examples. Number one, oh, by the way, and if you happen tonight to believe these things that I'm going to mention, I'm sorry. We need to talk more about that. And John and I think that we are going to be putting on a seminar later in the spring about anti-Semitism, even though the topic is not a happy topic, and shouldn't expect crowds of people. But it's an important topic because of the amount of ignorance that's there. People don't intend to be, no one intends to be ignorant. I don't intend to be ignorant about the things I don't know about. I do tend to say, I don't know about that. I'll say that first. I don't know about, don't ask me, I don't know. And yet a lot of people say things that they should say, I don't know about that, I can't comment. So what do they say? Well, first one, which I heard this week, the trial of Yeshua was illegal and a farce and wrong. Have you heard that? It's not true. It was a legal trial. It's a defensible trial. If you're going, what? Then you need to talk to us, maybe not tonight, it's Shabbat, but later this spring. I've heard people say, well, the Jewish people used to be the people of God until they turned their back on the Messiah, and now they're not the people of God because the church is the people of God. That's a normal thing to hear. It's not shocking at all to hear that because so many people believe it. It's also not true. So what can we do? Well, and in another sense, why should it matter? What does it matter? In a certain way, Jewish people understand that we're going to be the brunt of people's opinions. It's sort of something that we usually accept sort of graciously, and someone would, I hear someone calling me for the other room, so I'll be leaving now if the conversation goes on. But that doesn't mean it's right or it's proper or that it is really the kinds of things that we should be saying okay to. We need to be able to nicely speak out when people are not saying correct things about Jews and Judaism, even though it's flattering. So if you're the type of person who thinks, well, the Jewish people, a lot of people think Jewish people are smarter than everybody else. Yeah, that's also not very complimentary. John's mother used to say. John's mother loved everybody. She was like a ray of sunshine. She never said anything negative about anyone or anything. And when somebody said that, but you know, Marianne, the Jewish people, they're smarter than everybody else. And she goes, I know a lot of very stupid Jews. Okay, she could get away with that. She had a way about her. Or Jews, they're really good with money. We really want them to take care of the money because, you know, they actually have a lot of money. It's just it doesn't show up, you know, on the books, or you can't tell. Once again, might sound complimentary, is really not complimentary whatsoever. It's scary. It's scary dangerous. So these are things people might not realize aren't true, but they say them anyway because they think everybody knows this. And even if you go, I know you would never do this, but certain people, they're interested, and so they go to the internet because, you know, that's the best place to get all the facts you ever need. And then they find out all sorts of other bad things that Jewish people are, and that Jewish people do, and that Jewish people are in control of. And none of them really help the situation at all. So what can we do? How can we pray about these problems? Because they are problems. It's a problem in other countries as well as in America. America has always been a haven for Jewish people. And so we have felt at home here, even though if I had a quiz and I asked you what percentage of the American population is Jewish, how many percent of the American populace are Jews, you can get a figure in your mind right now, and maybe you'll be surprised to learn it's 2%. It's 2%. And yet, even in America, we're still singled out as being too rich, too famous, too educated, too fill in the blank, but it's okay, I guess. It's all complimentary, except it's not complimentary, is it? Because it's not. So, how can we leave this topic, which is a very, very sad topic, but one that needs to be discussed? And I said to John, I just don't know how we can put this, talk about this on Shabbat without people, you know, leaving the room like, I don't know, I felt good before I went, and now I don't feel good, so how can we leave this? And it was really sort of late this afternoon that I was sent something that I thought would be helpful. And if things had been perfect, you know, at the last minute is when John and I juggling several chainsaws in the air at the same time. And so if things had been perfect, we would have had something up here on the wall, but we'll get that for another time. We'll do that another time. Maybe every couple months we should go back. But in your packet of stuff is this half a sheet with the nice blue that John did all by himself, and Matt wasn't here. So, yay John, yay John. I said it would be good for people to take home something. Then when we talk about when you wake up, whenever you do your praying tomorrow, if you're not at work, if you're at work, please do it on your own time. I was the boss of some people, so just do it on your own time. But tomorrow, this might be something to return to, but I would like to do it tonight as we close. This is a prayer that is part of the bunch of prayers that are said after the Shema. And the Shema, we do it here and we stand up, and it's like if there was a creed within Judaism, there isn't one, but if there was a creed within Judaism, the Shema would be it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is God alone. That's the Shema. And then after that prayer, if you're by yourself, there are several other prayers you can pray. If you have a siddur at home, many people do. Kids are given siddurs, and they, a lot of times, even after they get in bed and turn off the light, they can either have it memorized or they have a flashlight or however, whenever you can fit it in. I'm going to recommend we pray this, which is like the third prayer after the one containing the Shema, and John's going to come up and help me with this. He had to get his own sheet and the correct glasses to read it. So, I recommend praying this. Let's think for a minute about what we really want from our prayers. We want the Jewish people to remain safe, correct? Let's think about that. We would like the Jewish people to be protected, yes. We would like friends of the Jewish people to also remain safe and also be protected, correct? We want our nation here to obey God and be blessed by God. Can we all agree with that? Yes, we do. What else can we think about when we think about this issue? We want people to be educated, yes. We want them to realize that some things they thought they knew for sure have not been correct. Would that be fair enough? So we can pray for more education. We can pray for those of us who know answers to speak up. Let me give you an example from my own personal life. When I was over at USF, I was friends with many of the people who were being trained in English as a second language education. They were being trained to teach English to foreigners. So, and that's great. I always enjoy my conversation with them. I never felt led to teach English. However, we had a discussion one day. There were a group of us sitting around, I don't know what we were doing, goofing around, drinking coffee, shuffling papers. And one of the women who I knew came in. She's a pastor's wife. I'm assuming she's still alive. Over in Tampa, very lovely woman, very fun, very peppy and bubbly. And in her particular class that semester, she had about half the class were 20-year-old guys from Saudi Arabia. And that was not abnormal. You know, the Language Institute over at USF in Tampa, whoever wants to come and pay the money can, be educated as long as they're college age or above. And in her particular class that semester, she had this whole bunch of Saudi guys, and she thought, and basically they were somewhat cute adolescent guys. She thought they were interesting, and she always wanted to make a good impression on them. She didn't want to fight with them, but she had to sort of tone them down. They got together, just like any guys who would be coming to a class together. So that day she said, I just came in from my class and I heard something outrageous, and we were all going, and we're writing and drinking our coffee. She said, well, one of the Saudi guys said, McDonald's is owned by Jews. We all know it, ha ha ha, said he. McDonald's, they're all owned by Jews. It's all about Jews get all the money from McDonald's. And I looked at her and I said, and you told them that wasn't correct, right? And she said, she didn't. I don't know why she didn't. What would you have done? What would you have said?
It wasn't correct.
Yeah, that's not right. Well, what if all 5 or 6 of them started yelling at you? You're the teacher. I mean, it's easy for us to say we weren't there, but I was shocked. I was shocked that she didn't have anything to say. She couldn't say anything. And they thought she didn't say anything because they were right and she'd been caught out. She's a fine Christian woman. She wasn't ready. I said, next time, tell them it's not right. They're not right. They're franchised by whoever wants to put their money in for them. So, having said that, we need to be able to nicely and politely speak up and say, wait a minute, I don't think that's right. That involves no yelling, no swearing, no cursing, no throwing anything as far as I can tell. But it's up to us.
A commercial for the business class.
A commercial for the business class.
Yeah.
Yes, whoever we are and wherever we find ourselves, to nicely say, So, having said that, this I think is a good prayer. The prayer seems to be designed to be prayed at night. There's in the prior prayer, there's something about darkness. And as I'm looking outside here, it's dark. And the winter is dark for a lot of hours during the day. And so many times when we're in the dark, we're confused and we're a little hesitant. We don't know what to do. And so I think this is a very apt prayer for us all to pray. So with your permission, I'd like to do it together. And I hope that it inspires you to pray more tomorrow and in the days to come. Lay us down to sleep in peace, Adonai our God, and raise us up, our King, to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from foe, plague, sword, famine, and anguish. Remove wrongdoing from before us and from behind us, and shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For it is you, our God, who protects and rescues us. It is you, our God, who are our gracious and compassionate King. Safeguard our coming and our going, to life and to peace, from now to eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who spreads a shelter of peace over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Thanks, everyone.
Let me just say a couple things. Just so you know, this thing that we're talking about goes from coast to coast. You may have been aware of the shooting of the owners of the kosher grocery store in Jersey City. Shortly thereafter, there was the vandalism of a synagogue in Beverly Hills, in which a dozen Torah scrolls were desecrated. Literally from coast to coast. It's not just our problem, it's also found in Europe, but it's very much our problem. We have prayed, that's one of the important things to do. In that prayer, we have said that we need to respond to those statements as well as those people when they come forward. Which then brings me to your third responsibility. You need to learn how to respond. And in case you have forgotten, much of the material in the book we wrote called The Distortion deals with some of these issues. There's a whole chapter, either chapter 4 or 5 of the Olive Tree Connection, sadly out of print, that also deals with it. Educate yourself. Fair enough? And now, having said that very significant prayer, utilize it certainly over the next 24 hours, but then over the course of the next several weeks. And as Patrice mentioned, we may do it together as a community from time to time as well to reinforce it. And as we pray with the understood reality. Shema Koleinu Eloheinu Utzvarachem Malinu Vekabel Barakamin Tafilatenu Baruch Atah Shamea Tefillah. Hear our voice, Lord our God. Spare us and have mercy on us. Receive in mercy and favor our prayer, because you are a God who hears prayer and supplication. Blessed are you, O Lord, who hears our prayers. Don't forget to keep in mind the various activities in front of us, whether it's a reminder to light the first of the Hanukkah lights in your home Sunday night, show up here on Friday night for our Hanukkah service, show up the following day, Saturday, for the Hanukkah party, for a meet and greet with Hanukkah Harriet. And don't forget, if you did not make it in time to get on the list for the retreat, we will be happy to put together a waiting list in case something opens up. Did I cover everything? Feels like I did. Oh, yes, I didn't. The semester is over, but there's another semester to begin in the middle of January. Take advantage of the courses. You can sit in on any course for 2 sessions for free. If we see your face the third time, we will charge you. But feel free to, in fact, enroll in those courses. Some very important and useful information. If you really want to understand the Bible better, you need to be able to see the Bible in its setting, and for that reason, historical geography of the Bible And then if you've got people who ask you questions about what you believe and what evidence you have for it, there's another course there as well. And there's more. Anyhow, enough said about that. We're now ready to continue our celebration of Shabbat with the reality. We have a God who hears and answers prayer, and as we have understood through the course of this whole evening, He is a shield to our ancestors, the rock for the people of Jacob. And that's us. And so it's in that reality we can step out and we can encounter whatever we need to and address whatever we need to, and do so with faces all lit up by the lights of the season. Please rise as Jenny leads us in receiving the blessing God said that He would, in fact, shower on us.
Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with a threefold blessing. Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, b'rachenu ve'bracha hamashulashet. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha, Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'yihunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and watch over you. May the Lord cause the light of His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn His face towards you with favor, and may He grant you peace. Shabbat shalom.
A time that is all Shabbat, a yom that is ever